The colony of Vera floated on the edge of a quiet star system. Its skies were calm, its fields wide and green, and its rivers stretched across the land like silver threads. The people of Vera were not warriors. They were builders, farmers, and scholars. They had come to this world to find peace away from the storms of galactic politics. For many years, they lived in safety, believing that their distance from the great powers of space would protect them. That safety ended when the predators came. The first attack struck at night. Silent ships descended from the upper atmosphere, their weapons bright against the dark sky. Settlements burned as defenses failed. The colony had only small patrol craft and civilian shuttles. Against raiders built for war, these offered no real protection. The predators did not want trade or diplomacy. They wanted resources, slaves, and control. The governor of Vera, a cautious elder named Laren, gathered his council in the central hall after the first raid. The hall was filled with voices of fear. Some argued they should evacuate, but there were no safe worlds close enough to reach without being hunted. Others demanded they call for help from nearby allies, but alliances were fragile, and Vera had little to offer in return. Laren rose and spoke with a steady voice. He told them there was only one choice. They must send a wideband distress signal into space and hope that someone, anyone, would hear it. The engineers worked quickly. A great antenna was raised on the tallest hill, its surface glowing as it powered up. Words were encoded into every known galactic frequency. The message was simple. A colony in danger, under attack, requesting aid. When the signal left the antenna, it carried across the stars like a whisper in the dark. The people of Vera watched the sky with silent hope. Many did not believe help would come. Others prayed that even strangers might hear their call. Days passed, then weeks. The predators struck again. Each raid left more damage and more fear. The defenders who tried to resist were struck down. Families fled deeper into caves and forests, hoping to avoid capture. Laren walked among them each day, carrying words of comfort he did not feel. He wondered if he had doomed them by wasting time on a message that might never be answered. Far away, on a blue and green world called Earth, the signal was finally caught. In a monitoring station built in orbit around Earth, a young operator named Arun noticed the faint repeating code. At first, he thought it was background noise. But when he filtered the signal, he saw the pattern was deliberate. He carried it to his supervisor, and soon it reached the office of the Earth Fleet Command. The leaders of Earth gathered in a great chamber to hear the message. The voice of Governor Laren echoed through the speakers. It was tired but filled with dignity. He explained their plight, their weakness, and their desperate hope for rescue. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. The officers and ministers knew what it meant. Answering the call would risk lives. The fleet was not limitless. The galaxy had seen humans as a dangerous people, a species that came from a death world where storms, beasts, and hunger had shaped them into survivors. Many alien societies treated humans with caution. If Earth sent a fleet now, it would not only be a rescue mission. It would be a declaration that humanity intended to take its place in galactic affairs. One of the admirals stood and spoke firmly. If they ignored this call, they would be no better than the raiders who preyed on the weak. Humanity had once been divided, but now it stood united under a single banner. This was their chance to prove what Deathworlders meant when they chose to fight for others, not just themselves. Debate lasted for hours, but the choice was clear. Humanity would not turn away. Orders spread across shipyards and bases. Engineers fueled engines, workers loaded supplies, and soldiers prepared for battle. Old ships were refitted, and new ones brought into service. It was not the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen, but each ship was built with a spirit of endurance. Where other civilizations designed for elegance, humans designed for survival. Heavy armor, redundant systems, and weapons meant to function even under the worst conditions filled the vessels. The announcement spread quickly among Earth citizens. Families gathered around broadcast screens as leaders explained the mission. They would send a fleet to defend a colony in need. Some wept with pride, others with fear, but all knew it was a step that would shape history. As the fleet prepared to launch, Arun, the young operator who had first caught the signal, looked at the stars from his station window. Somewhere out there, a colony waited for an answer. He whispered a quiet promise to the night sky. Help was on the way. And on the colony of Vera, as night fell again and the fires of another raid smoldered in the distance, Governor Laren stood on the hill where the antenna glowed. His eyes searched the heavens, wondering if his people had been forgotten. He did not know that across the void, ships of steel and fire were rising from Earth, carrying with them the will of a death world. Help was coming. News of the colony's distress call spread through Earth Fleet Command like fire. Officers studied the message, scientists analyzed the voice patterns, and diplomats whispered about the risks. Some believed the signal should be ignored. Others argued it was a chance to prove what humanity stood for. In the great chamber of decision, high above Earth in a station that circled the planet, leaders gathered. Admirals in dark uniforms sat beside elected council members. At the center stood Admiral Ron, a tall man known for his calm strength. He listened as arguments filled the hall. One council member warned that helping the colony might anger stronger powers in the galaxy. Another worried about resources. Earth was still rebuilding many of its fleets after long years of focusing on defense. To send ships across the stars for strangers was not something many civilizations would risk. But Admiral Ron raised his hand, and the room fell silent. His voice was steady, carrying the weight of his years. He reminded them that humanity had always survived by helping one another. When storms struck, when hunger spread, when war threatened, humans endured by standing together. If they turned their backs on the colony now, they would deny their own history. These people called into the dark, he said. We heard them. That means the choice is ours. We can ignore them and let the predators feast, or we can rise and show the galaxy who humans truly are. His words stirred the room. Some still hesitated, but one by one, they began to agree. The council voted. The decision was clear. Earth would send a fleet. Across the planet, the order was carried out. Shipyards that had been quiet roared with activity. Massive engines were lifted into place, hulls sealed, and weapons tested. Workers sang songs of courage as sparks lit the air. For many, it was not just labor but pride. They knew they were building ships that would carry hope to a faraway world. In orbit, supply depots opened. Crates of food, medicine, and tools were moved into waiting transports. Soldiers trained in long hauls, running drills again and again. They knew little of the enemy they would face, only that the colony's attackers were merciless. Yet none of them faltered. Humans had always faced danger without full knowledge, relying on their ability to adapt. The fleet was not the most advanced in the galaxy, but it was different. Every ship carried layer upon layer of armor. Every corridor had emergency systems. Every weapon was designed to keep firing even when half broken. Where other species built ships to avoid damage, humans built theirs to survive it. To outsiders, their designs looked crude, even brutal. but to humans, it was the art of survival shaped into steel. On Earth, families watched broadcasts showing the fleet's preparation. Some cried, knowing their children would sail into danger. Others raised their voices in support, sending messages of courage to the crews. There was fear, yes, but also pride. For the first time, humanity was reaching beyond its own safety, choosing to risk lives for strangers. In one training bay, a pilot named Myra adjusted her flight suit. She was young but carried the sharp focus of someone who had grown up in harsh places. Around her, other pilots joked to hide their nerves. Myra stayed quiet, studying the stars through the window. She thought about the colony waiting far away, people she had never met. In her heart, she knew she was flying not just for Earth but for them too. Elsewhere, in the engine rooms of a great warship, an engineer named Tomasz checked the fuel lines. His hands were rough, marked with old burns from years of work. He hummed as he tightened bolts and tested circuits. He believed ships had souls, and he treated each machine like a living friend. If the colony was to survive, these ships had to carry them through fire, and he would make sure they were ready. The day of launch arrived. The fleet floated in orbit like a line of dark mountains against the stars. Command ships, destroyers, carriers, and transports formed ranks. Lights flickered across their hulls as systems came online. Admiral Ron stood on the bridge of the flagship. His eyes followed the planet below, its oceans glowing in the sunlight. He thought of the colony, far beyond the edge of human space, waiting in fear. He thought of the predators who believed no one would come. And he thought of what it meant for humanity to answer. "Signal the fleet," he said. "We depart." Engines roared to life. One by one, ships slid into formation. Families on Earth looked up at the sky as streaks of light crossed the heavens. The fleet rose, carrying the hopes of billions. In the vast dark between stars, the ships gathered speed. Faster than light drives opened, pulling them into the endless void. To the colony of Vera, the journey would take days, but to the people of Earth, it felt like a heartbeat of destiny. Back on the colony, Governor Laren stood once again beside the great antenna. His people had begun to lose hope. Each day, more raids came, and each day, their defenses broke further. He gazed at the stars, whispering to himself that perhaps no one had heard. But above him, hidden by the distance of light years, the human fleet was already on the way. The Deathworlders had made their decision. And when they arrived, the galaxy would learn why humans were never to be ignored. The colony of Vero lived in quiet fear. The predators had raided them many times now. Each time they came, the damage grew worse. Families hid in caves, children cried through the nights, and the sky always seemed to burn with the memory of falling ships. Many had given up hope. They believed their signal had gone unanswered. Then, one morning, the sky changed. Above the colony, lights cut across the stars. Ships arrived, not the sleek predator vessels that had haunted their nights, but shapes entirely new. They were large and heavy, built not with grace but with strength. Their armor shone with dull silver, their hulls scarred with marks that told of testing and battles. To the people of Vera, these ships looked like mountains of steel moving through the sky. At first, the colonists froze. Some feared these new arrivals were another enemy, another set of raiders who had come to claim them. Whispers spread through the settlements. No one knew who these strangers were. In the central command hall, Governor Laren stood before the communication console. The room was crowded with nervous officials. "We must be careful," one of his advisors warned. "They may not be here to help us." Another shook his head and said, "Look at their size. If they wanted conquest, they would have attacked already." Laren's hands trembled as he reached for the console. He pressed the signal and opened a channel. For a long breath, nothing happened. Then a voice came through, deep and steady, speaking in translated words. "This is Admiral Ron of the Earth Fleet," the voice said. "We received your call. We stand with you." The hall fell silent. Many stared in disbelief. Some whispered the name Earth, trying to recall what little they knew of the Deathworlders. Stories had traveled across the stars, tales of a harsh world where storms, beasts, and hunger had shaped a people who endured the impossible. Most civilizations kept their distance, unsure whether humans were allies or threats. The colony had never expected them to come. Governor Laren cleared his throat and spoke. His voice shook with both fear and hope. "We are honored by your answer, Admiral. Our world is small, our people are not warriors. We ask only for protection. The predators will return soon." "They will return," Admiral Ron replied, "and when they do, they will find they are not free to prey upon the weak." For the first time in many months, the people of Vera felt a spark of safety. Word spread quickly across the colony. The Deathworlders had come. But not everyone felt only relief. Many colonists were shocked by the appearance of the human fleet. The ships were unlike anything they had seen before. Their own vessels, and even the predator craft, were sleek and elegant, built with curved lines and smooth engines. The human ships looked rough, built like fortresses. They had thick armor, exposed plating, and heavy turrets that turned slowly but with purpose. To some, they looked like machines of terror rather than protection. Children pointed at the sky with awe. Farmers left their fields to stare. Engineers and scholars studied the ships through scopes, marveling at how different the designs were. The people whispered among themselves. Could such a people truly protect them? Or would they bring a new kind of danger? Inside the flagship, Admiral Ron stood before the viewing window. His officers worked at their stations, scanning the planet and tracking energy signals. They reported signs of recent raids and confirmed that predator ships had been active nearby. Ron listened carefully. His face was calm, but inside he knew the challenge ahead. "Transmit supplies to the colony," he ordered. "Let them see our purpose is not conquest but aid." Transports descended, dropping crates of medicine, food, and clean water. For families who had hidden in caves, the supplies were like gifts from the stars. Healers rushed to use the new medicine, engineers tested the tools, and for the first time in weeks, children laughed as they held food in their hands. That night, fires still burned in the distance from the last raid, but the colony no longer felt alone. The humans had spoken with certainty. They would fight. On the edge of the system, hidden among asteroids, the predators were already watching. Their scouts had seen the arrival of the human fleet. At first, they thought it was a trick. No other power had dared protect weak colonies before. Why would humans risk it? But as the hours passed, they saw the humans spread across the skies, positioning their warships in protective orbits. The predator leader snarled at the sight. To him, this was an insult. No one had ever stood in their way. They had crushed many colonies, stolen what they wanted, and left without challenge. Now, these strangers dared to interfere. The leader sent orders through the fleet. They would strike soon. And when they did, they would test these Deathworlders for themselves. Back on Vera, Governor Laren walked through the settlement as night fell. He looked up at the sky, where human ships glowed like silent guardians. Around him, the people whispered with new hope, though fear still lingered. He knew the real test had not yet come. But for now, he allowed himself to breathe more easily. The signal had been heard. The Deathworlders had arrived. And the galaxy itself seemed to tremble at what might come next. The people of Vero felt safer with human ships above their skies, but deep inside they knew danger was not finished. The predators were not the kind to give up after one failure. They had ruled the edge of space for years by fear alone. Weak colonies fell easily, and no one had dared to resist. Now, with humans standing in their way, they would come back with greater force. The predators lived by strength. Their commanders believed that fear was the only law in the galaxy. To them, the colony of Vero was prey, nothing more. They had taken food, ore, and captives from other worlds without ever being challenged. When scouts returned with news of strange, heavy ships guarding Vero, the predator leader growled in disbelief. The leader's name was not spoken outside their own kind, but among his warriors he was feared. His eyes burned like embers, and his voice carried a sharp edge that silenced even the boldest of raiders. He listened as his officers described the human ships. They said the strangers were not elegant, not fast, but built with layers of armor, carrying weapons that glowed with power. Crude, the leader spat. They think thick walls can stop fire. They are fools. We will break them as we break all others. Across their fleet, ships prepared for battle. They were fast vessels with sharp designs, shaped for speed and sudden strikes. Their weapons were built to tear through lighter defenses, and their engines allowed them to strike and vanish before other fleets could respond. For years, this had made them untouchable. But against the humans, they would soon learn the truth. On Vero, Governor Laren stood in the command hall with his council. The humans had warned them that an enemy fleet was gathering nearby. Admiral Ron had spoken with firm words. The predators will come soon, Ron said. When they do, they will expect fear. They will expect retreat. They will expect silence. What they will find is resistance. Laren listened, torn between hope and dread. He asked the admiral what chance they had. Ron's answer was simple. We will hold. No matter what comes, we will hold. In the colony, people prepared as best they could. Families were guided to safe shelters underground. Farmers and builders carried supplies into caves, where they would hide if the fighting grew close. Engineers from Earth shared small defenses with the colonists, teaching them how to use shields and alarms. Though the colony could not fight like the humans, they wanted to do their part. High above, the human fleet moved into position. Battleships spread across orbit, carriers released small craft, and transports shifted to safer zones. The ships did not move with the elegance of other galactic navies. They moved like stones forming a wall. To the colonists below, they looked unshakable. Admiral Ron stood on his bridge, watching the stars. His officers reported energy readings at the edge of the system. The predators were approaching. Slowly, the scanners picked up shapes moving out of the darkness. One by one, their ships appeared, sharp and fast, their hulls glowing with red lights. The sight was terrifying. There were dozens, maybe more, their formation spread wide as if to surround their prey. In the command hall of Vero, screens showed the incoming fleet. Many colonists gasped in fear. Some closed their eyes, believing it was the end. But the humans did not flinch. They have come, Ron said. Signal the fleet. All units hold position. The predators closed in, confident in their numbers. Their leader laughed when he saw the human ships. To him, they looked slow and clumsy, easy targets for fast strikes. He ordered his vessels forward, eager to crush this new enemy quickly. When the two fleets faced one another, space fell silent. For a long moment, nothing moved but the stars. Then the Predator leader opened a channel, his voice carrying across the system. "You do not belong here," he growled. "This colony is ours. Leave now, or be torn apart." Admiral Ron answered with calm words. "This world is not yours. These people are not yours. You will find no prey here." The Predator leader snarled, his voice filled with scorn. "You are strangers, weak and foolish. We will break your ships and burn your bones." Ron gave his final order. "Then you will learn what it means to face a Deathworld fleet." The Predators surged forward, weapons firing, engines burning with speed. Beams of fire cut through space, aiming for the human wall. Explosions lit the darkness as the first shots struck. But the humans did not scatter. Their shields held. Their armor absorbed the blasts. Slowly, their turrets turned, and with a thunderous roar, they answered. The Battle of Vera had begun. The first clash in orbit above Vera shook the skies. The Predator fleet came fast, their ships weaving through space like hunters chasing cornered prey. Their weapons glowed red as they poured fire toward the human line. Beams struck with deadly force, and explosions rippled across the shields of the Earth fleet. To the colonists watching from below, it seemed impossible that the humans could hold against such speed and fury. But humans were not like the other civilizations of the galaxy. They did not fight with elegance. They fought with stubborn will. Admiral Ron stood calmly on the bridge of his flagship. His officers shouted reports as enemy fire rained down. A destroyer on the left flank lost shields but stayed in formation. Another ship took heavy damage to its hull yet kept its weapons firing. No one retreated. No one asked for surrender. "Hold the wall," Ron commanded. "Every ship, hold the wall." The Predators expected their first strike to shatter the humans. That was how every raid began. They struck hard and fast, and their enemies usually broke apart in panic. But these humans did not scatter. They absorbed the attack and answered with fire of their own. Human gunners aimed with ruthless focus. Their weapons did not spray wildly across the field. Each shot was calculated, each burst of energy meant to cripple engines or tear apart weapons. Where Predators fought for chaos, humans fought with precision. A Predator cruiser darted toward the human line, confident it could break through. Its sleek hull cut through space at high speed, weapons blazing. But three human ships locked their fire together. Their beams struck the cruiser's flank, tearing through its armor. The Predator vessel shuddered and spun, breaking apart into glowing fragments. On the planet below, colonists stared in awe. For the first time, they saw the Predators falter. The Deathworlders were not only holding. They were fighting back. The Predators grew angry. Their leader barked orders, demanding the fleet push harder. More ships surged forward, circling, trying to overwhelm the humans from all sides. They relied on speed, darting in and out, expecting the slower human ships to fail at keeping up. But the humans used the battlefield itself as a weapon. Near the colony, asteroids drifted in silent orbits. To most navies, they were only hazards to avoid. To the humans, they were tools. Small craft flew out, attaching thrusters and explosives to the rocks. With quick calculations, they sent the asteroids drifting into the paths of Predator ships. Several raiders were forced to break formation, colliding or dodging wildly as deadly stones crossed their flight paths. In another sector, a damaged human frigate refused to retreat. Instead, its captain ordered the ship into the middle of the Predator line. Sparks filled its corridors, alarms blared, but the ship kept firing at close range. It was torn apart piece by piece, but not before destroying 2 enemy vessels. The colonists would later speak of that sacrifice as a legend, proof of what humans were willing to give. Admiral Ron studied the battlefield. His ships were outnumbered, but numbers meant little to Deathworlders. On Earth, they had survived storms that lasted months, beasts larger than buildings, and disasters that could wipe out whole cities. Against such history, no Predator raid could break them. Shift formation, Ron ordered. Bring the center forward. Surround them. The human fleet moved with slow, deliberate power. Where the Predators darted like knives, the humans pressed like shields. Step by step, they closed the gaps, forcing the raiders into tighter spaces. Predator captains shouted in anger as their freedom of movement vanished. A Predator squadron tried to flee to the edge of the battle, but human fighters gave chase. These small craft were not the fastest in the galaxy, but their pilots flew with daring moves no other species would risk. They cut close to enemy fire, schemed along debris fields, and struck engines with perfect shots. One human pilot even spun her ship through the wreck of a burning cruiser to ambush a Predator fighter. On Vera, children and elders gathered in safe halls, watching the skies through broadcast screens. Every time a Predator ship exploded in bright fire, they cheered. Fear still gripped them, but now it was mixed with hope. The Deathworlders were showing them a kind of courage they had never known. The Predators, once so confident, began to feel doubt. Their leader roared commands, but his fleet wavered. Losses were mounting. Each human ship they destroyed seemed to buy enough time for 2 more to strike back. Every tactic they used, the humans adapted to. As the battle dragged on, the difference between the 2 sides grew clear. The Predators fought to feed. The humans fought to protect. And that made all the difference. After hours of brutal combat, Admiral Ron's voice rang across the fleet. Push them back. Do not give them the stars. Show them why humanity stands unbroken. The fleet answered with fire. Beams and missiles lit the void. Predator ships twisted and broke apart. The raiders, once so sure of victory, now fought only to survive. The tide of battle had turned. The battle above Vera had raged for hours. Fire lit the darkness of space, and explosions marked each strike of human and Predator ships alike. From the planet below, the colonists watched in awe. The Predators had never been challenged like this before, and the humans had no intention of giving ground. Admiral Ron studied the field from the bridge of his flagship. His fleet was smaller, their hulls scarred and shields damaged, yet they had managed to survive wave after wave of attacks. His officers reported losses, but the Predators' own numbers were now shrinking. Every ship the humans destroyed slowed the enemy's advance. Keep pressure on their left flank, Ron ordered. Use the debris fields. Force them into tight formation. Don't let them escape. Human pilots acted without hesitation. Small craft zipped around asteroids, using the terrain like an extension of their weapons. Fighters cut engines at the last moment, letting Predators overshoot and crash. Missiles fired from human ships struck critical systems. One Predator cruiser was forced to spiral out of control after its engines were disabled. Below, Governor Laren stood among his people. They had begun to venture out of hiding, peeking through reinforced windows and scanning scopes toward orbit. Children pointed at the sky, and elders whispered prayers of thanks. For the first time in months, hope outweighed fear. On the battlefield, human ships worked in perfect coordination. Their slow, deliberate maneuvers frustrated predator captains. Every attempt to flank or overwhelm the humans was met with careful counterattacks. Where predators relied on speed and shock, humans relied on endurance, strategy, and courage. In the center of the battle, a heavily damaged human destroyer fought alone against 3 predator vessels. Sparks flew as shields failed and weapons jammed. To any other species, this would have been the end. Yet the crew remained focused. They fired continuously, keeping the predators occupied and buying time for reinforcements. The colonists below would later call this the moment they realized humans would never give up. The predator leader growled in frustration. He had expected a quick victory, but the humans refused to break. His orders became desperate, his ships disorganized. One by one, his best pilots were destroyed or forced to retreat. The humans had turned defense into offense, and the predators had no answer. Admiral Ron seized the moment. Push forward. Surround them. Show them they cannot escape. The human fleet advanced like a moving wall. Destroyers and frigates took the front line, absorbing enemy fire, while carriers released waves of fighters to strike from all sides. Predator ships that tried to retreat were met with ambushes and careful fire from hidden human craft. The Deathworlders were relentless, refusing to give an inch of space. Below, the colonists could hear the distant hum of weapons and see the flashes of fire above. Engineers and scholars recorded everything they could, amazed by the tactics of the humans. Every decision, every maneuver, seemed designed to make the predators pay for every attack they had made on Vera. Even when human ships took damage, they did not falter. Pilots like Myra spun their fighters through debris and fire, striking predators with daring maneuvers no one else would attempt. Engineers rerouted power to shields and weapons, keeping damaged ships in the fight. Commanders coordinated attacks across the battlefield with precision that surprised even the aliens observing. Slowly, the predators' morale broke. They had fought countless civilizations, but none had resisted like this. Their leaders' commands became frantic. Some ships turned to flee, only to find human craft blocking their path. Explosions tore through their formations. Their confidence, once absolute, was shattered. Governor Laren watched the predators falter. He could hardly believe what he saw. The humans had not only defended the colony, they were now taking the fight to the enemy. Colonists whispered among themselves, speaking words of hope and admiration. Humans had changed the outcome before a single ground attack had been needed. Admiral Ron's voice came across the fleet again. Focus fire. Finish this. Show them what it means to threaten the weak. With a final coordinated strike, the Predator's remaining ships were either destroyed or forced to retreat into the void. The human fleet, though battered, remained standing. Their tactics, their courage, and their unwillingness to yield had turned the tide of battle. The skies above Vero fell silent as the last Predator ship fled. Sparks drifted in space from destroyed vessels. The colonists cheered, tears streaming down their faces. For the first time in months, they felt safe. They had survived because of the humans. Governor Laren stepped forward, addressing his people. We are alive because they came. They fought for us when no one else would. We owe them our lives. Admiral Ron looked down at the planet from his bridge. His crew worked to repair shields and hulls, preparing for any return of the Predators. He said nothing. The victory was theirs, but he knew the galaxy was watching. Humans had not only protected a colony, they had proven that they would not be ignored. The people of Vera gathered beneath the sky, watching the human ships shine like guardians above them. Children waved and called out thanks. Elders nodded with respect. For the first time, the colony felt the presence of something greater than themselves, something strong, determined, and protective. In the darkness of space, one thing was certain. Humanity had arrived. And the predators would never underestimate Deathworlders again. The battle was over. Above Vera, the human fleet hovered, scarred but unbroken. The predators had been driven away, their ships broken and scattered across the system. For the first time in months, the colony breathed without fear. The people stepped outside, their eyes wide as they looked at the human ships shining in the sky like silent guardians. Governor Laren walked through the central square, surrounded by citizens who had survived the raids. He felt a mix of relief and awe. These humans had come without promise of reward. They had risked their lives for strangers, and now the colony was safe. They fought for us, he said aloud. Not for power, not for gold, but for life itself. Around him, families began to gather. Children waved at the ships above, and engineers rushed to unload supplies. The humans had brought food, medicine, and equipment, but more than that, they had brought hope. The colony had learned something new, even in the darkest moments, help could arrive. On the flagship, Admiral Ron watched the planet below. His officers reported the state of the fleet. Some ships had heavy damage, others minor. Repair crews moved through corridors, working quickly but quietly. Every officer and crew member knew the cost of the victory, and yet there was pride in the silence of their work. Prepare communications, Ron ordered. We will speak with the colony leadership. Laren received the call in the command hall. The voice of Admiral Ron carried over the system, calm and steady. Governor Laren, Ron said. Your world is safe. The predators have been driven away. But remember this, humanity will not abandon those in need. We will stand with you whenever you call. The words struck Laren deeply. Across the galaxy, many civilizations claimed to be honorable, but few acted when it mattered. Humans had not only acted, they had risked themselves to change the fate of another species. They are unlike anything we have known, Laren whispered to his council. Not just warriors, but protectors. In the following days, the human fleet helped stabilize the colony. Engineers repaired damaged structures and reinforced shelters. Medical teams treated the wounded, while logistics crews distributed supplies. Human pilots flew in reconnaissance missions, ensuring that the predators would not return. Every action demonstrated the will and endurance of the Deathworlders. Children of the colony began to follow human soldiers as they moved through streets and fields. They asked questions about ships, tactics, and life on Earth. Pilots patiently explained, showing models of their craft and answering every inquiry. For the first time, the colony saw not only warriors but teachers and friends. Meanwhile, the predators regrouped far from Vera. Their leader seethed with anger. No species had ever resisted them so fiercely. Reports of the humans' tactics, their endurance, and their unyielding determination reached them like a storm. The predators realized that Vera had been more than defended. It had been a lesson. Humans were not only dangerous, they were unpredictable, relentless, and unbroken. Back on Vera, the colony celebrated. Small festivals took place to honor the humans who had saved them. Songs were sung, and stories were told of the courage displayed in orbit above. People who had once feared for every sunrise now walked with renewed strength, inspired by the actions of strangers who had become heroes. Governor Laren addressed his people. We have been given a gift that cannot be measured in words. These humans came not because they had to, but because they chose to. They remind us that courage and honor still exist in the galaxy. Remember this day. Remember who stood with us, and carry that hope into the future. On the flagship, Admiral Ron watched the colony's celebrations from orbit. He allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had proven its strength not by conquest, but by action, by courage, and by choice. They had answered a call when no one else would. The galaxy would remember this moment. As the fleet prepared to depart, Ron gave one last order. We leave behind protection and hope. Carry this forward, and know that humanity will watch, always ready to stand against injustice. The ship slowly lifted from orbit, engines glowing as they slipped into faster-than-light travel. Vera remained safe, its people alive and stronger than before. The colony looked up at the stars, knowing that they were not alone. Far beyond, humans traveled toward other parts of the galaxy, but their presence lingered in the hearts of those they had saved. For the first time, the galaxy understood that humanity had earned a place among the stars. Not as conquerors, not as mercenaries, but as guardians, protectors, and a force to be reckoned with. Vera would rebuild. Its people would grow stronger. And they would tell the story of the Deathworlders who had come when hope was lost. A story that would spread across systems, teaching all who heard it that courage, will, and honor could overcome even the darkest threats. And somewhere, in the distant reaches of space, other colonies sent their signals, hoping to hear the answer that humans had promised to give. Humanity had arrived. And the stars would never be the same again.